Good evening and welcome to the February 7th, 2023 regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. I will now call this meeting to order. We will start by presenting the land acknowledgement, and Director Nichols will do that for us.
We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish, Snohomish, and Tulalip peoples. We express our deepest respect and gratitude to the ancestors of this land on whose shoulders we stand. In Everett Public Schools, we strive to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belonging for all students, teachers, staff, and community.
Thank you very much, Director Nichols. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Lassane.
Present.
Vice President Mitchell.
Present.
Director Herman.
Present.
Director Nichols.
Present.
Director Mason.
Present.
Student Representative Colley.
Present.
Student Representative Gilbertson.
Present.
Thank you very much. Our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Salzman, would you introduce tonight's agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and the public this evening. Tonight's agenda contains the following: the superintendent's report, a segment for board comments, segment for public comments, a segment for routine business, segment for strategic progress monitoring, segment for unfinished business, a segment for new business, and a segment for upcoming agenda items. Since publishing the agenda, the following changes were made to the agenda. Item 7.01, the superintendent's report, the presentation was updated. And item 10.02, approval personnel report updates were made. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Salzman. Is there a motion for the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved by, the adoption was, motion was made by Director Mitchell and it was seconded by Director Herman. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, we'll proceed to the vote. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those say opposed, say no. Hearing none, the agenda is adopted. We'll now move to section 6.0, which is our recognition section. There are no recognitions planned to come before the board this meeting. And we'll now move to section 7.0, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Salzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and the public this evening. First of all, before I begin, I would like to just mention today I had the opportunity to visit the GOAL program, and what a wonderful experience it was for me to visit that program. And I'd just like to have a call out to Ms. Terry McAllister, an educator with great passion and energy, and I was so proud to be amongst her today at the GOAL program. Really started my morning off in a great spirit, and I want to thank her for her great work. Well, welcome to the second semester of the school year. Amazing learning happens in all our schools. So to all our students and staff, keep up the great work. And to our seniors, don't start the countdown right now, okay? The second semester. School Counseling Week. Wow, I am so proud of our school counselors every day, but this is the week that we honor our school counselors. I'm grateful for the care, motivation, inspiration, and support that they give our students. The theme this year is helping students dream big, and this is what they do. Thank you, counselors, and thank you to Mr. Dave Peters for all he does in that department. Thank you. February is Career and Technical Education Month, CTE. Learning is different for everyone, and CTE offers many ways to learn, from the classroom to opportunities outside the classroom. Thank you to our CTE teachers. You are amazing. And to Anthony Anderson for leading that department, thank you. February is also Black History Month. During Black History Month, we honor the achievements and central role of African Americans throughout the United States history. If you visit our diversity, equity, and inclusive webpage, you can find many resources on how to increase your personal cultural awareness of this national observance. To our entire district that focuses on equity, and to Joy Odom Grant, thank you. I had the opportunity to join high school and beyond facilitator Ms. Sarah Pewitt, and what an amazing job she does to help with the mock interviews with seniors. One of the best opportunities for graduating seniors, practicing just makes them better for interviewing skills. I had the opportunity to be at Cascade High School, and I just had a marvelous time, and I'm so proud that our students are doing so well. We're in good hands with the future of our youngsters in our district and a bond. 50 years of Title IX. What an inspiring event at Everett High School last week. We recognized and celebrated 50 years of Title IX, and the girls basketball also won that game. But just to be there with many people that came back, people from California even came back to Everett just for that evening, and the bonding of the team. And a lot of those team members work in the Everett Public Schools that I found out. And I want to thank Kelly Shepard and her team, and just being there and everybody wearing their Letterman jackets from the class of 1988 and more. It was really nice to see that. So I appreciate that so much. You know that we are celebrating 25 years of student art shows? 25 years. Student art will be displayed here at the CRC beginning later this month. Thank you to the EPS Foundation for all you do making this event memorable. 25 years. Our transitional kindergarten program began last week. This program gives some of our youngest learners who haven't been in preschool an opportunity to meet teachers, learn schedules, and make friends. It will help them get ready for kindergarten this fall and start their path for student achievement and social emotional learning. OSPI recently shared that new data release showed the state's program to support our youngest learners transition into kindergarten is making a tangible difference in the student achievement and kindergarten readiness. Congratulations to the Cascade High School cheer team. They are varsity co-ed sideline national champions. And what a great moment that was. And I appreciated getting the text from their sponsor right from that moment. So congratulations to Cascade and their entire cheer team. Reminder that midwinter break is February 20th and 21. All schools will be closed. And finally, I want everybody to know this evening that our school stakeholder annual survey is coming soon. This survey gives school leaders and staff important information to guide our school improvement. We want to thank you for partnering with us as we work to understand the strengths and challenges impacting school quality. We are looking forward to hearing from you. Your voice is important to us, and we encourage you, please, to fill out that survey. Thank you this evening for the opportunity, and wish everybody a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zoffman. We'll now move to section 8.0, which is board comments. And the purpose for this item is for directors and student representatives to share what they've done in the district and in the community that pertains to district work. So who would like to go first?
I can go first.
Yes, Director Mitchell.
Relatively quick. Just two things. My husband and I have very much been enjoying basketball throughout the district. I don't recall what I said at the last meeting, but we went to the Bruegel Festival, which we were able to see Cascade and Everett play, both varsity girls and varsity boys. What a wonderful place. That Cascade gym was packed. And to see the Everett spirit afterwards, because the Everett girls and boys played. Those Everett girls are phenomenal. I really did, after that game, compare them to the Mariner boys when it comes to their defense. We've been able to be to Jackson games, enjoyed senior night this past Saturday, their last regular season game, and I am trying to convince my husband that it is worth driving to Tacoma to see them play. But that's a really, I don't know what I'll have to do to get that. Then the next thing is I bumped into a friend who her oldest and my daughter started second grade preschool together. So based on our strategic meeting last week and really talking, Anthony, about those kids who 35%, I think it was, that we don't know where, they didn't go to high school or college. We don't really know. They could have gone to the military. But I was talking to her about her boys, and her boys, I think, are like, maybe that 35% that when they graduate, they kind of know what they're good at. They kind of know what they think they might want to do. And they're 20 and 18 now, trying to find their way. But she's really proud of where they're going. And so I wonder, based on that presentation, just if there is this percentage, as much as we want to have all kids find a path and know at least what their next step is, but if it's okay for a couple of kids to graduate and just not know, and that's okay to explore and to do things. So it just came to me as I was talking to her, because she's so happy about where her boys are, but they're not in a career path, and that's okay, because she said they're doing what they love. So I just thought that gave me just a pause about what we learned last week. So thank you. It's all good stuff.
Director Herman, would you like to comment?
I'll go next. Not as brief and not all is good. I just want to start out by expressing my condolences for the sudden loss of one of our incredibly involved parent volunteers and PTA leaders in our district last week, who worked at the local, district, state, and national level. To the family of Amanda Cabana, as well as the Evergreen and View Ridge school communities. She was indeed a champion of PTA and a strong supporter of the Everett Public Schools Foundation. She loved our schools, staff, and students in all that she did, and she will be greatly missed. So just a note to her. She was a great one. Also, I want to second the remarks about the mock interviews. Those were terrific. I was able to participate at Jackson, Cascade, and Everett High, and appreciated the opportunity to talk with students one-on-one, see their resumes, and hear their plans after high school. Additionally, I want to thank also Terry McAllister and Kelly Clevenger for organizing the presentation last month to hear from some of the Goal students directly. I'm glad you were able to get over there. They're at the Carl Gibson Center, and as you know, GOAL stands for Gaining Ownership of Adult Lives, and it's part of our transition program for 18 to 21-year-olds in special services. For both of these, the mock interviews and the GOAL program, it demonstrated how varied our students' plans are when they leave our school system. It truly reinforced our district mission of preparing every child to succeed, no matter what their plans might be. And lastly, this is week 5 in the legislative session, and so far almost 1,500 bills have been introduced across the different committees. Thank you to Director Mitchell for testifying on House Bill 1248 regarding student transportation, providing data on our funding gap. There does seem to be several bills in committee right now that address the STARS formula, so we'll see where that goes. Director Mason, thank you for submitting written comments in support of House Bill 1238 on universal free meals, school meals. This was scheduled for executive session in the House Education Committee this afternoon. And a similar bill in the Senate, Senate Bill 5339, has already moved out of committee and has been referred to Ways and Means. So there appears to be some traction on this. And WASDA is advocating for this nationally as well. Thank you to Early Learning Director Ann Arnold for providing written testimony on House Bill 1550, Transition to Kindergarten. The main concern was cutting off current transitional kindergarten or TK programs from our existing K-12 system, which would limit access to quality early childhood education. All accounts are indicating that we can expect to see that bill amended as it makes its way through the legislative process. Other bills to note: House Bill 1504 and its companion bill, Senate Bill 5257, ensuring elementary school students receive sufficient daily recess. Currently, 0 minutes are required by state law. The bill originally included 45 minutes required recess. That was amended down to 30 minutes and is also making committee progress. Thanks for the response back on that, by the way. And lastly, a big one, House Bill 1436, funding special education, will be heard in House Appropriations this Thursday, and I plan to state our pro position. Right now, there are already many people signed up to testify. As expected, we're seeing many of our education associations represented, and overwhelmingly their responses are pro, as you can imagine. So that will be an important one to follow. 2 important dates coming up. February 17th is the bill cutoff date for any new bills being introduced and moved out of committee. And March 20th, we anticipate the official revenue forecast for the state, which will obviously indicate how much money the state's working with, so an important date there. We have legislative conference in Day on the Hill, February 26th and 27th, and also for directors and student representatives. The window for updating WASDA positions is going to be opening in April. So if there's any amendments that you'd like to current WASDA positions or proposing new ones, we can work on that, and that'll be in April. So thank you.
Director Herman? Director Nichols? Have any comments?
I don't have any comments for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Mason?
My comments are brief. I also had an opportunity to participate in the mock interviews, and it was, I think, the last day for this class. So I got a couple individuals who had missed the opportunity earlier. And what struck me is they were perhaps less prepared than some of their peers, but when they spoke about themselves, how they felt like they didn't have qualities or any experience to bring to the table. And as you started to talk to them more and more, you realized they had a whole lot to bring to the table. They had values, they had ways that they had supported peers in the past and gone out of their way to be helpful. They had work experience, which they didn't see as a skill. And so it has me thinking a lot about, part of it might be the age and how we view ourselves at that age, but how we can do a better job as a district of helping students recognize their potential and how we create the language around that so that they can speak to it. So, everyone needs that 30-second elevator speech about who they are and what they do. And that was kind of missing with some of our students. And it wasn't due to a lack of skills or attributes that they could bring to a job or, their next step, whatever that may be. So just something I've been thinking on a little bit. And then just switching to the legislative session, I plan to sign in pro on Thursday. I have it on my calendar to do it before our meeting on Senate Bill 5311 and House Bill 1436. So I'll be adding my support there as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Mason. Student Rep Colley?
Hi. The school year is starting to move quicker. It's now the end of the semester. And I met with Ms. Boaton from the district to provide student input on whether or not the SAT should continue during school day hours. We also won nationals, as Dr. Saltzman has said. Went with my cheer team to Vegas, and that was super fun. It was a really good competition. I have a school dance approaching, Tolo. It's coming Friday, the end of this week. And I'd also like to say Happy Black History Month. This month is to look back and understand the hardships of the African American community while celebrating all our glories. May we cherish in unison. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Student Rep Colley. Student Rep Gilbertson?
Hi, I also got to meet with Ms. Boatman and talk about the SATs, and kind of feedback from my school was a lot of students, well, the ones that were there felt more like Saturday would be better, seeing that SATs aren't required as much for colleges anymore. So having it on a Saturday would be like for the people who want to take it just to see where they're at. But the only problem would be transportation. But yeah, I got to be part of that, and that was awesome. And finals weeks went by fast, but also very slow, very difficult, especially AP class. I have AP psychology, which Dr. Saltzman visited once a while back. And yeah, that's what's been going on.
Thank you very much, Student Rep Gilbertson. Thank you. Thank you all for your comments. We shall now move to public comments in section 9. Have any comments?
Okay, just making sure.
We shall now move to section 9.0, which is public comments. And we have no public comments for this evening. So we shall move to section 10.0, which is our consent agenda. Dr. Saltzman, would you provide an introduction to the consent agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and the public this evening. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items such as meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, surplus lists, gifts and grants, and recurring contracts. Sometimes it includes items that occur less frequently but are of routine business nature. These items are usually reviewed by the board in the Friday report 1 or more weeks before the board meeting. This gives directors time to ask staff questions or to consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office received no questions. The consent agenda is presented and published for board approval.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salzman. A motion to adopt the consent agenda is now in order.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
It's been moved by Director Nichols and seconded by Director Herman to approve the consent agenda. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda, place it into new business section of this agenda to be heard? Hearing no requests, we'll now proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries. The consent agenda has been approved. We'll now move to section 11.0, which we have the opportunity of hearing about strategic plan priority outcome metrics report by Dr. Matthews. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you.
We practiced that this afternoon, and I was a lot quicker, so my apologies. So thank you for inviting me to be here tonight to talk about the strategic plan priority outcomes. As you know, these are foundational to our strategic plan because they are the way in which we evaluate our progress toward meeting the initiatives of the strategic plan. And tonight I'll be talking about all of our priority outcomes, and in particular focusing on both performance and growth. My objectives tonight: review the priority outcome metrics, help you to understand the measures both in performance and growth, and then also talk a little bit about the cadence of release. Not all data comes directly from our system, and so we have to rely on OSPI and other outside organizations. All right, we'll start with our first priority outcome, which is ensure third grade literacy. So for performance, we look at really two things. Proficiency on the Smarter Balanced Assessment in third grade in English Language Arts, and the iReady Winter Diagnostic for grade 3. 63.8% of our third graders in the 21-22 school year, so last spring, met standard on the SBA in grade 3. And 43% of our current third graders, so the 22-23 third graders, have already met standard on the iReady diagnostic. So that means that they're at or above standard on the diagnostic. And it's important to note that we're only halfway through the year, so there's a lot of learning left to go. So this represents how many have met to date. For growth, we look at a couple of different measures. The first is the average achievement level. And for those of you who have watched student growth over the years, typically we have used student growth percentiles, but because the Smarter Balanced is had a gap of years, couple of years, OSPI has turned to the average achievement level, which is really an older measure that we used to use in the days of the WASL and the MSP. Essentially, that's calculated by taking the level that each student achieves on the SBA. So students in level 1 get 1 point, students in level 2 get 2 points, and so on. And then there's a weighted average. So for our third grade class, the weighted average of SBA is 2.86. For grade 3 in iReady, when we look at growth, we look at two measures, typical growth and stretch growth. So typical growth is just what typically students achieve in the course of a year, according to the research that's been done. Stretch growth is the growth that would be needed to accelerate your learning. So if you're behind, you really need to reach those stretch growth goals and sometimes reach them in more than 1 year. So looking at the winter iReady, so just this year from fall to winter, 46% of students in grade 3 have already met their typical growth. So we're halfway through the year and 46% have made 100% of their typical growth. And to put that in a little bit of perspective, which not a priority outcome, but I think it's a helpful way to think about this, 91 is the median typical growth for our third graders. So what does that mean? It means that 50% of our third graders halfway through the year are already above 91% of their typical growth. That is a very, very high number. It's something to celebrate, and it speaks to where we're going toward the end of the year. For the stretch growth, where 23% of our students have already met their year stretch growth halfway through the year. And the median right now is 43% of the stretch growth, which means 50% of the students have already achieved more than 43% of their stretch growth. And to further understand that, these are students who could be far behind. So meeting that stretch growth is a very big deal. All right, increased science achievement is our next priority outcome. And for that, we look to the Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science. That's given in grades 5, 8, and 11. So district-wide, 55.8% of students met standard on the WCAS, the Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science. 64.1% in 5th grade, 48.1% in 8th grade, and 55.3% in grade 11. And as with our prior metric for science growth, we will look at the average achievement level. District-wide, so 5th, 8th, and 11th grade, the average achievement level is 2.47. At 5th grade, it's 2.75, 8th grade, it's 2.41, and at 11th grade, it's 2.21. Our next priority outcome is increased math achievement. And for this, we have modeled it really around the same as science, looking at a grade level for each grade band, so 5th, 8th, and 10th grade. District-wide, 44% meeting standard. At grade 5, 53.5%. At grade 8, 41.3%. And at grade 10, 36.6%. In addition, we look at the percent of students who are at or above standard in the winter iReady diagnostic and math in grade 5, and that's 32%. So 32% of our students are already at standard at this time of the year. We also look at earning credit in Algebra 1 and Geometry. So this metric comes from last year's grades. So in grade 8, 38.7% of students earned a credit in algebra or geometry, and in grade 9, 86.3% earned a credit in algebra or geometry. For growth, first we have the average achievement level. So district-wide, 2.31. For grade 5, it's 2.63. Grade 8, it's 2.27, and grade 10, 2.02. We also look at the typical and stretch growth for math at grade 5. So 29% of students in grade 5 have met their typical growth for the year. And looking at their median amount of growth achieved was 56%. So half of the students have already made more than 56% of their typical growth. 9% of students have achieved their stretch growth goal, and the median for that is 32%. So 50% of students are higher than that and 50% below. So the next metric is closing the gap. And before we look at the numbers, I want to take you through a couple of things that you may have seen before. So first of all, the gap is about minimizing the difference in performance between and among student groups. There are lots of ways to do that. The way we want to do it is for both groups, all groups, to be going upward, and for groups that are lagging to accelerate at a higher rate than other groups, so that we are closing the gap while everyone is improving. In addition, we want to be sure that we're closing the gap and meeting standard, right? We don't want to say we have a small gap, but people aren't meeting standard. So the metric that we look at is the SBA index. And we do that because this provides both a comparison of student groups, but it also helps us to understand how students are meeting standard. And before I give you our data in this area, I just want to walk you through how that is calculated, so you'll have that context. So the SBA index is a measure of the performance level of a student, and it helps us to understand their growth between levels. I do not want you to worry about the school year on this. Remember, I'm going back to a time when we had 3 identical tests in 3 years. This is just a sample. So this student in grade 5 earned a 2467, and that put the student in level 2, and only 17% into that level, so a 2.17. In the next year, that student earned a 2532, and when we look at that score against the range, that's a 2.76. So that student has gone from 2.17 to 2.76. They have not stayed at about the same level. They've actually made ground, right? They've gained ground. In the third year, the student's a 2593, which puts them at a 3.39. So they've hit level 3 and they're 39% of the way through the level. So by looking at that SBA index, we can see every year this child is getting closer to standard and making improvement. This is especially helpful when we look at the gap in the aggregate. Now, typically, how we've looked at the gap in the past is to take 2 groups and look at their percent met standard. So it's a binary thing, you met or you didn't meet, right? And we're looking for whether or not the groups are going up. In this case, the blue are low-income students, percent meeting standard, and orange is the non-low-income students. And both are going up. In fact, the gap is actually closing. It was 34.3%, now it's 29.5%. The problem is we don't really know if on average, the low-income students are below 3.0, almost to 3.0, if they're really close to the students that are non-low income. We just know met or not met, right? So another way to look at that is by looking at mean score, and this is the exact same data, just looking at the average mean score. Again, both groups going up, but you can see the gap's closing, and the gap is very different. They differ by 66 and 64 scale score points, right? This is much more helpful. However, and not even I have done this, unless you've memorized the scale score, you still don't know if these kids are meeting standard, right? So if we look at the SBA index, we really get a picture of both things. We can see both groups are going up. In fact, we can see that our low-income students are gaining ground, right? We can see that gap is closing from 0.83 to 0.66, and we can see that the low-income students are now at standard on average. So that is closing the gap by minimizing the difference, by both groups going up, and by meeting standard. All right. So when we look at our metric for our strategic plan around reducing gaps in achievement, on the right here, you see the average index score. So for example, we have all students at 3.29. Our African American or Black students in English language arts are at 3.08. There is a gap, 0.21. But that group is above, on average, above the mean. So this list shows us where students are, groups of students are individually. On the left side here, we're just seeing the differences. So our 0 point is all students. And these bars represent how each group deviates or differs from the all. So for example, our Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, our multilingual learners, and our students with disabilities are below the gap, below the all. And they're pretty, that's a big number, I'll be honest. It's almost one full level. Less so, we have our Hispanic and Latino and our students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. So first thing is we want to see those differences get smaller. Here is our math. Our all students are at 3.01. And I'll just point out, because we did look at our first group here, African American or Black, for ELA, they were at the above that 3.0 line. Now they're at 2.71. So we want both to get to 3.0 and we want to close the gap. So here are alls at 0. The difference between the all and each group is less in math than it is in ELA, but it shows the same pattern. So when we look at growth, then we're really looking at how are we getting those groups to 3.0. So all of the groups in green have achieved that on average above 3.0 in their index score. The ones in gray are below that line. All right, our next metric is ensure students are prepared to succeed in college and career. And we have several metrics for this. So the first is our 4-year graduation rate. And for the class of 2022, that is 92.7%. For growth in this area, we look at the percent of students who are enrolling in 2-year, 4-year technical colleges. And we look at 2 different sources. We look at the Educational Research and Data Center, ERDC, and the National Clearinghouse. We do that because they actually look at different populations. So ERDC is looking at in-state 2-year, 4-year, and technical colleges. The National Clearinghouse is looking nationally preliminary or predominantly 2-year and 4-year schools. They also lag often 1 to 2 years because they want to see those students enter college and get through that first year. So right now, ERDC is reporting the class of 2019 at 63% enrolled. And National Clearinghouse is reporting the class of 2021 at 58%. And we expect between summer and fall that they will refresh and we will see another graduating class. And then we'll update those numbers. Okay, the next metric in this area is the WIDA, Multilingual Learner Assessment. And WIDA does not stand for anything very helpful. It's just world-class assessment. These are both TBD right now because we are waiting for the official numbers from OSPI. This assessment was new for the purpose of multilingual learner assessment last spring. And so OSPI is just lagging a little bit in sending out the aggregate data. We do have the individual student score data, but not the aggregate yet. All right, the next measure is a growth measure, the percent of graduates meeting at least one of the college and career readiness standards. And in the middle there, I think we have something huge to celebrate. 99% or 1,250 students met one or more of these areas. And I'll talk about each one of them because they bring in often different types of students, the definitely different types of data. So the first here are the CADRs, or the college academic distribution requirements. So these are the 7 areas that a student, according to the Washington Association of Schools and Colleges, WASC, need to meet for college admissions. And 79% or 993 of our students met every single one. That number shoots up if you count just 6 of them. So important to understand that a student meeting 6 of them has a very good chance of getting into college. 7 is just a magical number. All right, the next one is the SAT benchmark. So these are the benchmark scores in the evidence-based reading and writing and math parts of the SAT, which College Board, through their research, has shown correlates with success in the freshman year of college. Now, you notice it says 101 out of 132. That is because this is the class that did not get to take the school day SAT. And so there are two challenges with getting good data on this. One is that students identify their school and they often get the number wrong when they're, on a Saturday. They don't get it wrong when they do it during the school day. And then the second thing is we have to go in and literally pick every single SAT test and sort through them to find our kids. Whereas the school day SAT, it just comes in one nice big package. So of the 132 students who took it on their own during the pandemic, 101 met that benchmark, which is quite good. And we will report, obviously, on a whole a class next year. Dual credit enrollment is earning credit in Running Start, college and high school, AP, or career technical education dual credit, and 95.6% of our students, 1,205, earn dual credit, which is amazing. The next is the ASVAB, or the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. Notice that there are 44 students. We didn't do a percentage because this is something that has to be reported by the student to us, and they generally only do it if they're trying to achieve one of the college pathways. So many more students might have passed it and many more might have taken it, but 44 provided those scores to us. 23 students notified us that they were planning to enlist in the military in their Naviance exit interview. And again, this is student-reported data, so it could be a much higher number. And then finally, on the CTE side, 413 students in the class, 33%, had an internship sometime during high school. I will say that they had less opportunity. This class had less opportunity because there are many internships just not available during the pandemic. And then 117 students, 9% of the class, earned a career ready certificate. All right, our last metric is strengthen student wellness, engagement, and safety. And our first metric comes from the school stakeholder annual survey. Spring of 2022, which we are, as you heard from Dr. Salzman tonight, about to launch for 2023. 3 areas that we are looking at: school safety, engagement, and emotional regulation. For 59.3% of students responded favorably to school safety, 39% responded favorably to engagement, and 48.6% responded favorably to emotional regulation. For growth, we will compare last year's scores to the spring that is coming out soon, and we will update you on that. The next metric in this area is regular attendance. And this says initial internal calculation, and I'll just be honest, this is about to be released by OSPI. So I just took it because I checked it and it's right. So 64.9% of students met regular attendance, and this is a very, very high bar. And keeping in mind that 21-22 was a year when students were still getting COVID and having 5 and 10 days off. So the bar for this is that you are counted as proficient in regular attendance if you have less than 1 absence every 30 calendar days. So that's weekends, holidays, everything. So it is a very, very high bar. So we're at 64.9. I'd expect that number to go up, but again, very high bar for students last year. And then growth will be a comparison of the 22 and 23 rate. Exclusionary discipline, this is the percent of students who are have a short-term, long-term, short-term suspension, long-term suspension, emergency expulsion, or expulsion. That data too is right now in the process of being vetted at OSPI, and it'll be released in the next couple of weeks, and we'll send out an update. And that is all I have for you.
Directors, now it's time for questions. Student reps as well. Please, question? Yes, Director Mason, we'll start
Hi,
with you.
thanks for great presentation. I'm going to start with the last thing, one of the last things you said, attendance. We are now living in a world where kids coming to school being sick is a very dangerous thing.
Yes.
Can be potentially. We learned that, I think, the last few years. How is that being balanced with, I mean, is there conversation around this? Because, you know, we get these poor marks on attendance, and so kids, you know, want to come to school when they have sniffles and everyone gets sick. And
Absolutely. I completely understand. And the regular attendance measure, you might remember just before the pandemic, they adopted the Washington School Improvement Framework, which replaced the Achievement Index. And attendance was a part of that. And that is where they set the metric. If you're enrolled in any school for 90 non-contiguous calendar days, then you count toward the attendance of that school, and you have to have less than one absence, right? Obviously, attendance was really important to the State Board of Education. They went through a big process, but they could not have predicted the pandemic, obviously. So one thing really to remember, and we'll see this in March when that metric comes out, that it really is relative when we are being assessed as a school system. So when we look at the Washington School Improvement Framework, we're put into deciles based on our performance. So,
right,
so 64%, for all I know, could be 90, you know, in the ninth percentile.
Right.
It could be awesome.
Yeah.
You know, but
think
I mean,
it's-
obviously
yeah.
we want 100% of our kids to be in school every day. We also want them to be healthy and safe. And we're in the same boat everyone else is.
yeah, it's a challenge, a big
Yeah,
challenge
absolutely.
to hit both of those. And then my other question was, and I've never asked this before, tell me about the alignment with iReady testing to the SBA and the state standards. I know,
Yeah, absolutely.
because iReady is used across multiple states, right? And
Yep.
so we have different standards than other states.
We do. We have the Common Core, and actually, iReady is based on the Common Core state standards. They report student performance literally down to that standard level.
Okay.
And they just finished a correlative study with the Washington data in SBA and Washington schools. And the correlation was greater than 0.8, which is really high for a correlation.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, great, thank you. I guess my only other comment is the grade 10 math scores, but we won't go there right now. Thank you.
Yes. Director Nichols.
I really only had one question, and that was going back to the smarter balanced mean index scores. Do we have that data to see how it compares to previous years? Because I see like this is where we're at right now.
Yes.
But what is there any growth within those groups? I know we saw it on the slides previously.
Yeah. Yes, so we have calculated it in the past, actually going back to 2015. The problem is that the Smarter Balance test changed during the pandemic. So the 21 test, which given in the fall of 21-22, that cannot be compared in any way, right? This last spring is shorter. However, they have kept the exact same blueprint for this spring, so we would look at the comparison moving forward because it'll be the same test.
So it's an apples to apples situation.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I think that was pretty much it. I mean, overall, you know, we've got a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of encouraging data here. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Mason. Director Herman, you have a question, it looks like.
Well, I think it was, and the attendance was throwing me off, but because normally it would be around those 90th percentage, but it's because it's a WASIF that it's normed with that. So when you say the regular attendance being in, that's scaled.
So the regular attendance that's at 64, that's the actual regular attendance rate for our students last year. So when I was talking about the scaling, I was referring to the Washington School Improvement Framework data, where they will take all the attendance rates for every school in the state of Washington, they will line them up, and they will say, the bottom 10% get a 1, and the top 10% get a 9. So we don't know yet what that is because they're in the process right now of doing that huge calculation at OSPI. So it's hard to know if we're talking relatively how well we're doing in comparison to other schools right now. We will know soon. But of course, we want 100% attendance. That's really what we would want. But we have to also be realistic that kids are going to be sick, and we need to make sure that they have a chance to get healthy.
Absolutely. And these right now are for the strategic plan. These are our baseline. So
These are our
going forward
baseline.
until 26, this is sort of what we're going to be using.
Exactly.
Do we have are there any data points on students that are going to any of the colleges on remedial classes or anything of when we send students off, just how well we're preparing them?
So ERDC does do a report on that, the Educational Research Data Center for the state of Washington. So we can certainly pull that report for you.
But that's generally, that wouldn't be district specific? Or?
Yeah, it would be district specific. I can't guess what that number is right now.
Or if it's
I haven't looked at the
consistent
data.
for building a trend even. I'm curious if that's something. Okay, I'd be curious on that.
Just had one follow-up question on the attendance issue. Is our non-compulsory grades, is that counted in that as well? So like kindergarten's not a compulsory. So like my kindergartner who's been out probably 3 weeks already this year with sickness because little kids are gross and they get everybody sick all the time. So that's dragging our numbers down. Got it. Okay.
Although your student or any student only counts once.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I guess I have, I'll just continue on that attendance question because Student Representative Gilbertson brought it up. We're talking about the new calendar. Did the state not authorize for high school students or students like unlimited mental health days? Do I recall that?
I don't think I can comment on that.
I thought I heard something about that. And so it really was this, how do we attest to attendance when we want to give kids mental health?
Well, so it's important to understand that that rate is not unexcused absences.
Okay.
It is absences of any kind.
all
So the state of Washington identifies appropriate reasons for an excused absence, but excused or unexcused, the only
Still
things
an
that do
absence.
not count against us would be if the student was being served while they're out of school. So for example, on a longer suspension where we might provide some sort of tutoring, or a school field trip that's educationally related.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I have just one funny thing, because I did the Jackson High School thing, interviews too, but Sarah Pruitt did tell me that she had a student that was a little bit disappointed by her ASVAB because she didn't score very well, but English is her third language, with her first two being Ukrainian and Russian. And she wants to go in the Marine Corps. And Sarah said she's very, very petite. And I said, oh my gosh, somebody's going to make her pass that, because they want her in the Marine Corps. But I just thought that was interesting. The student like reporting they took the ASVAB and trying to figure out how they could do better, and actually having, 3 languages is just outstanding. My question, and I think I heard maybe my answer from the question that Director Nichols asked, because I was doing the math. A 5th grader who took the SBA in 19 would have been an 8th grader who took it in 2022, if I did that math right. But I heard you say the test is not the same test. So looking at a kid to see that learning loss, to see that where we used to do those, where we could line up the kids, but it's a different test.
It is shorter and it has a different blueprint. So
Okay.
yes, I mean, it's still the Smarter Balanced assessment,
Yeah.
but it is shorter, has a different blueprint. It will have the same blueprint moving forward.
Okay, but then
Yeah.
we can look at that same 5th grader when they become an 8th grader, when they become a 10th grader, if they stay
Yes.
with us. Okay, because I was just thinking about that gap in the pandemic. So then to Director Mason's question about the mathematics with that ratio, that SBA index. So an index of 2 means that the kids are only at a level 2 out of 4?
Are you talking about the average achievement level?
Yes.
Yeah,
How does,
so
how does, how,
this
what does
is-
a 2 mean?
So that
Is it
means
2 out of 5 or 2 out of 4?
2 out of 4.
2 out of
So
4.
level 2
Okay,
is, yeah,
so
level
not
2.
at
So
standard.
we want to be 3 or above.
Okay.
We really do. That's our
Right.
goal.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
so as we
okay.
look at this data moving forward.
Okay, because that's what I was looking at these scores and looking at these kids in 2022, how many years they weren't at school on full
Sure.
time. And so it's like, that's just a reality. And then, that is my last question. No, thank you. That was really great data.
Thank you.
Very good data. I really appreciate it. It is amazing that 95.6% of our students are getting dual credit. I think that's right on, and you know, I'm looking forward to that number going up, as well as 92% of our kids are graduating on time. And I look at that number going up after the pandemic, you know, a couple of years. We're 1 year out, so hopefully next year it'll even be, or this year, it'll even be higher than that. I have a question going back, and I know we've probably asked this several times with SBA and the numbers, and are going back to the 3rd grade, when you start looking at the SBA for that. I guess I have a problem when you say half of the students are meeting standards or have met the standard. And just especially the 3rd grade, when that is an indication of on-time graduation. And that was one of our, I guess you would say, ensure 3rd grade literacy when we start looking at math and literacy. And I'm a little concerned, what more do we need to do to ensure that our kids, because there are times, even though we're halfway through and you say half the kids have met standard, what more can we do to ensure that at halfway through the year, 100% of the students have met the standard so far, because we can't take them backwards to reintroduce units that they may have missed.
So are you referring to the iReady score or the SBA?
The SBA and iReady. When you look at the, 43% and you say, well, that's really like the 91 percentile, that's better than half of the kids. So we're halfway, half of the kids are meeting standard. I don't understand that.
So this is 43% of students on the iReady demonstrated that they're at or above standard already.
Okay.
So we give that in the beginning of January. And so that's really leaving 5 or 6 months of school left. So we wouldn't expect 100% of kids to be at grade level standard by the middle of the year. There's
On
still a lot of
certain
teaching.
units, you would expect them to have met the standards. in the
Absolutely,
units.
yes, absolutely. And and they will show on the test that they have met standard on certain groups of standards. That doesn't mean overall being at standard. This is the overall score. So if you're looking at all the domains, in literacy, it would be phonics, phonological awareness, vocabulary, high frequency words, comprehension of literary and informational text. It would be the whole thing.
Okay.
So we wouldn't expect everybody to have all those down by January.
Okay, gotcha. I understand now what you're saying.
And just to clarify too, so that means that 43% of these kids are going to continue to move forward. So they're going to be on those potentially stretched.
Absolutely.
And then the other 47, 67, 30, I can't do that math right now.
We understand.
Continue to work. Everybody's still moving forward.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
that, okay.
But how can we ensure that those remaining students are going to be at standard at the conclusion of the year when they take the SBA? Because we have no guarantee. Then that's a larger percentage of those that have met standard.
One of the great things about iReady is that they demonstrate the typical growth, so we can actually predict typical growth and stretch growth. So we would take a look at, we don't have it here, but a percentage of kids who are on track to meet that typical growth and stretch growth. That's, I think, the answer to your question.
Mm-hmm.
And I would actually also say that one of the things that we have with our iReady data is that this is actionable data. So this is midway through the year, and our teams are actually in schools looking at that data and making plans for, hey, who is in the yellow bar? Who are still 2 grade levels below? What is our plan for that? And so the regionals and principals at our schools are actually utilizing this data to actually start refining their tier 1 and tier 2 interventions to help close those gaps for those students, so that by the time the SBA rolls in, they'll have more achievement.
When you start thinking about science and that particular category, is there a concern that the district has with 8th grade being so much lower than where it should be at the halfway point?
So this 8th grade is last year's 8th graders. And so I did the math on this group of people, 22, 21, 20, 19.
So they had to continue with another science class in the 9th grade.
Right.
How is that cohort doing to show improvement at the 9th grade to ensure that by the time that they graduate or go to the 11th grade, they can do very well on that WCAS or that science, next generation science exam?
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. So this 8th grade was the first grade to actually have the Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science. And so it was the shift to the next generation science standards. So I don't know if you want to speak to the science part of it.
So one of the things that we have done to try and ensure is we've gotten tighter coordination and alignment through our curriculum. We just had some adoptions with chemistry last year. We also, right now, for our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, have a newly adopted science curriculum that is NGSS aligned, very project-based learning, and actually emulates a lot of SBA, or excuse me, the WCAS test examples as well. So there is some refinement. We've done some science adoptions in the last few years, and we're continuing to refine and work with our teaching staff to ensure that students are getting not only access to those NGSS standards, but also making sure that they're on track for graduation. We have some fail-safes in there around, are we checking our grades for 9th grade success and keeping them on track? So we're working through some of those curriculum pieces to keep them aligned and tight to ensure that students don't have gaps by the time they get to that WCAS at 11.
Because isn't it the 8th grade, that particular grade, that we see a larger deficit than all of the other ones?
A larger deficit on the WCAS, this group, yes. However, I would say that this current group of 8th graders have had, last year they had a 7th grade that was NGSS aligned curriculum because we adopted in January. And this year they've had a full year of NGSS aligned coordinated curriculum. So we are hopeful that while that says 48.1%, we are hopeful that that will continue to go up.
But this is also the first year that this test was introduced, right?
It was introduced in 2019. So that group of 8th graders would have taken that test for the first time ever. They didn't have the 5th grade as an option or a way to understand what it was going to look like. And honestly, it's a very different test than the SBA. It's very hands-on.
Because that's my thing is with this type of number, knowing that it's a relatively new test, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Like teachers may not be as familiar with the test to teach to make the knowledge that the students are learning make sense on a test like that. So there's some growth all around that needs to happen. I would be really curious to compare this data against the actual like test scores and grades and stuff like that from that group to see how different they were. And was it a question of, are we not teaching to that standard, or is it that they just couldn't translate that for whatever reason? I'm a bad test taker. It would be that.
The science department's also invested a lot of time this year in creating items and assessments in Performance Matters that emulate the same look, level of rigor, the same standards as they're going to see on the Walkcast, which will help immensely.
And I'll just hopefully end on that note to say any opportunities for any kind of putting these numbers in context, whether it's against state numbers, if we have that data, or similar sized, i.e. free reduced lunch districts, things like that, is helpful, because I feel like we're in such new territory coming out of the pandemic that I'm looking at some numbers, and what may seem, a little hard to look at might actually be not too bad. Context is helpful where, and I just want to say thank you. It's a great presentation. You're exceptional at explaining all of this to us. So I appreciate that.
I love having the numbers in front of us. That's good to know. Thank you very much, Dr. Matthews. We'll now move to section 12.0, which is information and discussion. And I see there are no information and discussion items for this agenda. We'll now move to unfinished business, which is section 13.0. And Dr. Golden is our presenter this evening for the school calendar 2023-2024.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, President Hossain, Board of Directors, and Dr. Salzman. Tonight, based on your request, I will provide a summary of what students shared regarding the 23-24 calendar. A survey was sent out to Everett freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. Just over 1,400 students responded. That's about 32% of those students. Much like our community survey, students shared diverse perspectives. Specific to start of school, 482 said keep it as is. 356 said start before Labor Day. Regarding the week of Thanksgiving, 869 said keep it as is, and 364 wanted to make it a full week. For mid-winter break, 602 said make it a full week, and 585 prefer it as is. Overall, 767 liked the calendar as is, and 621 would like to see some change. Other comments they made: start later in the morning, don't start before Labor Day, don't change anything, start before Labor Day, more breaks, and longer summer. So at Cascade, let me back up for a second. So I did meet at Cascade, Everett, Jackson, and Sequoia with student groups. I do want to say thank you to our student reps who both participated at their respective schools. And at the conclusion of each of the meetings, I showed students a visual of what this year's calendar looks like and what a proposed change would look like. At the end of each meeting, I did ask students to share what their highest priority would be for the new calendar. At Cascade, students thought change would be good, start earlier and end earlier, and breaks throughout the year. A consistent comment at each of the high schools was to consider the high school day later, perhaps even 30 minutes. When I probed further and asked, the students shared consistently about mental health and needing time not only throughout the year, but also in the school day. At Everett High, students shared to keep Thanksgiving a long weekend, leave spring break in April, start early to end early, consider starting midweek, so we have 3 days at the beginning of the year, 4 days, and then 5 days to start the year. Consider the weather in August. They much like Cascade, Everett students shared the need for mental health days and more breaks throughout the year. Students also shared that after winter break, there's a long stretch before their next break. At Jackson High, students shared to start the school year early, end the school year early, so they had more time to prep for the AP assessment. They commented that some colleges go back in August. They prefer full weeks off, not just days. Create a calendar that's cohesive with their outside lives. breaks throughout the year for mental health, and they would love longer lunches.
Yeah.
At Sequoia, students shared that they would like, starting in August, they want breaks throughout the school year. They feel those are important, and they want us to consider the stamina it takes to be at school a long time, and extend the school year to allow for breaks and consider how long they get for breakfast and lunch. All right, so feedback from the board of directors, students, parents, and staff were discussed with union leadership, specifically considering starting later in the week as we start the school year, like a 3-day, 4-day, 5-day start, and moving a few days to that week in February. Union leadership listened and shared their continued advocacy for the proposed calendar. Traditionally, the calendar is primarily bargained with EEA, although other labor groups have always provided district input. In my 10 plus years in Everett, the calendar development process was more collaborative and transparent this year than I've ever known it to be. All labor groups were involved. Overall, there was a lot of goodwill among the associations. Not one group challenged or disagreed with the proposed calendar. Stakeholder feedback was sought and included. Every association and meet and confer group, a total of 10 groups, provided input. The process included stakeholder engagement and good faith bargaining. As you can see on the slide, EEA, our paras, and our office professionals who really are mostly impacted by the school calendar reviewed and provided feedback. The development of the school calendar is part of EEA's contract. The calendar was co-created with all feedback. The Para Association stated, why didn't we do this before, specifically start and finish early in a full week in February? And the office professionals stated, it's great that we have the opportunity to start early. So the proposed calendar includes starting the school year before Labor Day, a full week off for midwinter break. As mentioned at the previous board meeting in December, we have significant staff and student absences when we have partial weeks. Over the last several years, these absences have resulted in a high number of unfilled positions. Classes are combined or specialists are pulled to cover classes. I'd also like to note that neighboring districts, Mukilteo and North Shore, have the full week off in February, and other districts have moved to a full week or are considering it, like Seattle and Shoreline. Spring break is the second week of April, aligning with neighboring districts Mukilteo and North Shore, and school ending the second Friday in June. Here you can see the details in an overview. And I'll take questions.
Director, there's opportunity for questions.
So you said none of the labor groups opposed the calendar as presented, but I'm going back to the December presentation, and it looks like Everett Nurses Association, 95% would like to keep winter break as it is. Do they mean midwinter break or like the Christmas break, the holiday break? Sounds like midwinter break.
You're correct, yes.
So that's a labor, group that disagrees with the calendar right there. And what I'm not seeing in this process, granted, I'm really glad that you did the work of going out and talking to students and everything else. But there are some very practical concerns about a full week off over it for the midwinter break, right? You've got 57% of parents that don't want it, according to our survey. They want to, the majority want to keep Thanksgiving the way it is, which we're doing. A lot of people want to start and end earlier, which is awesome. But that midwinter break, it creates a big financial burden for a lot of folks in our district with childcare costs. And so I'm wondering, I didn't see any kind of compromise with that full week. Could we do a couple days before the weekend and a day after or something like that, that would lessen that burden on, because I want to give everybody the breaks they want to have. But we have to be practical about it. I was expecting to see more movement in the calendar in a compromising direction.
Yeah, after the December meeting, along with the other pieces, what came up a few times was the idea of taking a few days from that beginning of the school calendar and moving it to February. So doing like a 3-day, 4-day, 5-day start. And that was discussed. In fact, it had been discussed prior to the December meeting. But it was, those groups had strong advocacy. And when I say it's the most involved were the teachers, the paras, and the office staff in those conversations.
Which is great. But, it doesn't do anything to kind of alleviate these other very valid concerns. And there's great arguments on both sides of this issue, whether to change calendar or not. But we're going to be impacting people, real people that live in our community with this decision. Most of which people will adjust to. Starting a few days earlier, okay, it's all smoky in August anyways, who cares? Getting out earlier, great, it's nicer in June and July now. But this midwinter break thing is gonna, doesn't cause me personally any heartburn. I'm fortunate enough to have a large amount of leave from my job, but I know most folks that are living paycheck to paycheck in situations that they don't have paid leave, this is gonna be a big burden for them.
Any other comments?
Can I take off from that, please?
Yes,
Because
go
I
ahead,
have-
Director.
Yeah, so I have.
Mitchell,
Yeah,
please.
I have, I guess, two specific questions because of that February break that is going to be new to people. That, yes, childcare is an issue, but I think you confirmed the why and the Boys and Girls Club would be available. I just really wonder if, again, for that financial need, that financial burden, how do parents find out about scholarship opportunities or financial aid for those programs? Because I do believe the why, when my daughter, they have, like, if you're on Medicaid, there was different rates that parents could find out, and how best could parents find out? But, if we're not going to approve it today, is there time for communities to really wonder, like, what is the sliding fee scale? How much would it cost them, if anything, for that week?
Dr. Bowen?
Just like you mentioned, we did receive confirmation from our child care partners that the February break that they would definitely have child care available, so that was true. In terms of the sliding scale, they do offer scholarships. I don't have the rates, but by starting a conversation, they have forms that can be filled out based on there are a few different criteria, and families often qualify based on all sorts of need. Okay. And so those have been widely available, and they were very happy to help families if there is need in that area.
Okay, because that would be my biggest concern, just like his. It is the parents that can't take the time off.
Absolutely.
Get 2 weeks, or some don't get anything, to make sure their kids are taken care of. And then the second thing, I think Brian could answer this better, but with Chromebooks, any parent that is worried about learning loss, or maybe a test that's coming up, might have concern about access. Our middle school and high schoolers, yes, they have their one-to-one, but elementary school kids, are they able to check out Chromebooks and maybe Wi-Fi if there's not available for that week, so that if parents want to do extra work, and this could even maybe be for Shelley too, parents that want to keep their kids engaged in learning for that week, who have that ability, can they have the technology?
Yes, they can. We're actually doing that during spring break this year. We're getting requests from elementary for access to their computers and hotspots if they don't have strong internet at home. So that's something we would continue during midwinter.
So we can support the families that with that. And I guess too, Dr. Bowden, I don't know if this is something for you, but, could there be, iReady, like the little checkoffs that kids have with our iReady concerns, so that we just took January. Now they've got this big week in February. Parents are seeing those scores and being like, oh, I need the kid in class. could they have like a checklist, we want this to do for iReady or something?
One of the beautiful things about iReady is that because when students take the diagnostic, it sets the instructional path for them. So students have access to those lessons online. If we have, like many of our students, I think Emerson was one of our schools at the winter break, sent Chromebooks home with students. They checked them out. They did iReady participation over the break for students who wanted to. Of course, want to provide students with breaks, obviously, but if there is a need and a family would like to continue with that, if they don't have the technology or the hardware, we can provide that for them on a checkout basis, and they will continue to be able to access their instructional path. And for secondary, don't forget, if they have their one-to-one devices, a lot of times students might use some of that opportunity to kind of catch up or just take a breather and say, hey, can I go back and can I work on those pieces? All of our courses have Canvas pages, and so students can access an interface with the curriculum very easily on their one-to-one devices.
Okay, I appreciate that, because it is, yes, some people will take the, I'm just going to sleep in, or we're going to play, or we're going to be at the Y, and I don't know if the Y would support that, but it would be for those kids who want to, those parents that want to, we could provide the options.
Yes, we have resources to be able to provide options for people and for families as much as they would like to be able to do that. So for families who are saying, hey, we'd like to take opportunities to just do family time, they're able to do that. For families who want to take advantage of the time or keep their skills fresh, they have access to our online resources like iReady, which is a great one.
Thank you.
And that is all well. I've heard from several parents who are very much concerned that they still have to work, they have to be away, and their kids are away from their teachers, and they're concerned about that extra week. And they're concerned about the learning loss during that particular time, going into the time period when tests are, going to be coming up. And they're very much concerned. I've also heard from parents that are concerned about the cost of, as Andrew mentioned, they live paycheck to paycheck. They may not have that ready access cash to pay for those programs at the Y, or the Boys and Girls Club, and those extra days being very burdensome for them, because they can't take the time off to look for the best opportunity available, or it may not be available at their particular school. Because I don't believe Y and the Boys and Girls Club are at every school. They're only at
They are not at every school. They're at a few select schools. However, I will say, and Dr. Willard may want to correct me, but we have great relationships with our Boys and Girls Club as well as the Y. And if there is an anticipation, we could certainly partner with them to explore what are some opportunities that we could provide. Is there a midwinter camp that we could provide for our families at different sites? That would take some coordination, but certainly we could explore those options.
I could add to the sites. We don't have the YMCA at every site. However, every site is served. So they have what they call mega sites. So even though it's not at every school, they actually, they draw from different schools. There's transportation involved. It just depends on which site you're talking about. But they have several of those, and that way they consolidate their services. So that's part of the model they already service with.
It still would be a financial burden for those that are not already registered at that particular program to then take advantage of that week or that time period for those that are currently not involved in that particular program, right?
Yeah, yes, it does cost.
It does cost.
Yes.
Could I say something? About the Boys and Girls Club is I volunteered there, and it's already fairly crowded as it is. So having to have more students come in for that longer period of time, just because some parents couldn't watch over them. Also, another thing was I had a teacher comment to me about, I've said this before, but comment how the longer winter break seems more for like the adults in a way, just for a longer break for them too. I mean, yeah, the students get the break too, but we have the winter break that comes, or the spring break that comes up soon. And one more thing was, it's a little off topic, but about getting student input, is I realized during like the SAT, when they asked for our input, it was only juniors. There were no, I think input from more seniors would be good, because they have past knowledge on this stuff compared to just juniors and below. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Director Herman.
Yeah, I just want to chime in on a few things. First of all, Dr. Gold, thank you so much for this. It's a large process, and that's a lot of discussions you had to gather all this input. I hope that we can continue doing this type of discussion and collaboration for years forward. I do think the calendar is something that is going to be for districts a topic of conversation as we move forward. Tomorrow, there is a webinar OSBI is having on the balanced calendar, and I'm looking forward to hearing that. Some of the rationale was actually using that break in February for academic catch-up. So it actually had the intention of, that's the perfect time, as I think was already mentioned, that students can use their devices, use some, whether it's a more formal structure or whether it's challenges on iReady. There's so many things we could do with that. I think if we were able to pass it tonight, and we'll see how it goes, but that would give us a year to sort of put some things in place with that in mind for February. But I am excited about where we are now. We were not here 5 years ago with devices, with internet. And so I really want to take advantage of the fact that as a district, as all of our districts, because of the last few years, we have more tools available to us. And as we're looking at test scores and students that need to make progress, I want us to build in time for that catch up. And I think that's what that break could be. So I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say. Some anecdotal, what the assistant superintendent said about the rationale of the balanced calendar, and they should present research and best practices on that tomorrow. But it was including things like the overall smoothness of the system, that teachers could use that break to do things like dentist appointments and that sort of thing. So they were noticing the districts that have already adopted more of a balanced calendar, there were, as you were mentioning, fewer absences. Also, custodians would be able to schedule deep cleans during that time. They were just pointing out some of the rationale of having this more sustainable, they call it balanced calendar, and it is meant to be sort of just a calmer school year. And again, referencing back to the AP students, I was just thinking back on how many AP classes have summer homework to try to catch up. And in one case, I believe it was that a student had, in preparation for an AP class, had done the summer homework and then found out, and hopefully this was years ago and this doesn't happen now, didn't get that AP class, and so just making a calendar that's a little solves some of these problems, and it's just better for our overall system. So
yeah, thank you. One thing I wanted to add is, I know I mentioned this before, but what we haven't had in the past is alignment with neighboring districts, especially with the breaks. And that's one opportunity we have if we were to go that direction. It provides cohesion within the community to provide those supports, and we could be leaders in that as well, looking at ways we can support kids.
I'm thinking too, what you just said, that a full year to work with our care providers to, and I know, but this is an important topic, if that's all right. But maybe there are.
Still have another director who hasn't.
I appreciate that, but financial money, who are some financial foundations that could help to have those families that can't find the childcare. So I just wanted to add that, because you brought up that full year. So
Director Mason, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I do, actually, a few. First, I want to thank you, Dr. Golden, for the work that you have done on this. I know it's been enormously time-consuming, and what I've realized is there are a lot of diverse opinions on this topic. I've talked to a lot of people, and I took a lot of notes about, I even went and did the pros and cons on, there seems to be some consensus around Thanksgiving break, which has not come up, that people love that Wednesday off, and that's great. There seems to be a larger consensus around ending the school year earlier. The two different areas where I received a lot of different feedback was the start of the school year and the midwinter break. And just as a point of context, I did a little research on that February break, and it has its roots in the Northeast during the energy crisis of 1970s, which was a way to save on heating costs and bus fuel at a time when those were very expensive. Currently, only roughly 26% of Washington districts have a long midwinter break. And according to OSPI, they're mostly prosperous districts, so more affluent districts. To me, as I look at, so I'll start with starting the school year earlier. Of the 6 districts that touch our boundaries, 5 begin after Labor Day right now, this past school year. I don't know if they're in negotiations to change that at this point. I've heard some are. Lake Stevens is the only one that doesn't, and they do a soft start, where they bring some students back, and it's not a complete first day of school kind of thing. In terms of the full week, you did mention that Mukilteo and North Shore both have the full week of February off, but the other 4 do not. And again, I don't know if that's in discussion or not. I think when I looked at a lot of districts, even beyond our borders, nobody starts that Monday before Labor Day. That is really early. If they do start before, it's usually that Wednesday or Thursday, and they might have a soft start, or they just choose to start on one of those 2 days. But it does, like you mentioned earlier, bring this, you have a 3-day school week, which is a nice way to ease in after a long summer break. Then you have a 4-day school week, and then you go into your 5-day school week. So I too was a little surprised there was no compromise off the initial, especially when we brought up that there were concerns amongst parents and other groups, students. And so, at this point, I would love to consider starting, if we did start before Labor Day, that Wednesday perhaps. And then that full week in February, the SBA's director, Lassane, mentioned, SBA testing window begins March 6th, which is 6 school days after that full week off. That seems not like a lot of preparation for which unfortunately is a fairly high stakes test, because we look at the data all the time and we compare ourselves all the time. So I have concerns around that. Also, if you take that full week off, it means we either have to push the school day or the school year earlier or later. And since there seems to be more consensus around ending early, it means we have to start on that Monday. So, is there an opportunity to keep that February break as is, or add Friday and make it what would that be, a 5-day break versus 9 days with the 2 weekends? And then start on a Wednesday. And those are just my thoughts about, at the end of the day, we're not going to make everyone happy, because I can tell you everyone has a different opinion about what we should be doing with the calendar. But I just feel like there's an opportunity for a little more compromise rather than biting the whole thing off all at once like this.
I agree. I also want to know what that assistant superintendent at OSPI is using to stay so positive, thinking that students will spend their week off, on their computers. I don't see that happening at all.
don't see that happening.
I don't see parents having the time to enforce that. That's all great, but it sounds like a lot of unicorns and rainbows and not a lot of reality in what a break should be. Because a break should be a break. It should be time to decompress, get away from work, get away from school, and not think about it. I can't see this calendar as is working very well for our families.
At this point, I'm kind of wondering, is it possible to go back and revisit this, or would you prefer us to vote on this?
My concern is the calendar seems delayed currently. A lot of decisions are held on when a calendar is decided. The conversation about shifting days has happened several times.
Right. I can look at for the 22-23 school calendar, we approved that on the 8th of March, which this being the 7th of February allows for, greater work there. For the 21-22 calendar, it was in our bargaining agreement, according to what I have here. So this this calendar was just presented in December. And right now, it doesn't, if we were to vote today, it doesn't appear that we would get an adequate vote on this one. So my question to you is there an opportunity for us to go back and look at some ways in which we can get a compromise schedule before we were to vote on this calendar?
Or could we just offer amendments currently?
Say again?
Could we offer an amendment to this calendar currently and then vote on that amendment? Or does it have to come from?
I can't, it is a bargaining agreement, because I would not suggest that we do go that route and ask for an amendment, because it's a bargaining agreement.
Yeah, then I think it would be prudent just to go ahead and vote. And if it dies, it dies. And we have next year to work on it. And then everybody else can get on with planning their calendar year. Yep.
Directors? Therefore, I will call for a vote that, is there a motion to approve the proposed calendar 2023-2024 as presented?
I'll move to approve the calendar as presented for 23-24.
And I'll second, just so we can have a vote.
Okay, it's been moved that we approve the calendar that's been presented for 2020-23, and second, moved by Director Herman and seconded by Director Mason. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No.
No. It appears that the no carries, and the amendment is, the recommended schedule is not approved. So at this particular point in time, that's where we stand. Okay. We'll go now to section 14.0, new business. We rarely get this opportunity. Every 2 years, we get this opportunity. The first student representative.
Every year.
Every year.
Every year.
No,
Yeah.
it's every other year.
No.
Oh, it's every year. Okay, good. The first student representative was approved by the board during November of 2011 at the regular meeting and seated in December. It's been said that one way to nurture democratic citizenship is to engage the students in the governing process of the local schools. Students reps and students represent and advocate for their communities and use their role to improve education for all in their district. And we have a clear opportunity to listen to their voice. Because student rep Benta Colley is a senior and will be graduating, she was selected 2 years ago for a 2-year term. Student reps Colley's replacement will be a student from Jackson High School, and interviews are scheduled to be conducted in April. And it's not to say that we're doing this because you'll be leaving us, but we know you will be. But we value our student representatives, and we have the opportunity to select a board member who will be going and doing the interview at Jackson High School. At this time, are there any directors who would like to volunteer their name forward as an interviewer?
Well, I had the privilege of doing it last year, and I think it is one of those really fun opportunities that we get as directors to meet some of our most outstanding students. And I would recommend that Director Herman consider it, because all of us here on the dais have had that opportunity. Just throwing out an idea.
I highly support that idea.
I recommend that 100%.
But do you have time and a desire to do it? Is the question.
Do you have time and desire? That's the big question.
I would love to be a part of that process. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. I would then recommend that Director Herman be our representative to select the next student representative. All those in favor, say aye.
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 I think you need a second.
No, it's been seconded. You too seconded it.
Okay.
I don't think it's a formal vote.
I don't think
We're
it's
just
a
all in
formal vote.
support of
It's
the
just-
idea.
Yeah. It's a given.
I know
So
she'll do an
Director
excellent job
Herman
and bring
has
us
been
another
selected
excellent
to be
candidate.
our leader in the student rep category. And we would like to say, if anything, you look at these two representatives, they are the guides and the guide points that you look for the next student representative. They're cheerleaders for their schools.
It'll be fun too, because it's Jackson High.
It's fun, it's fun.
So you'll know.
That'll be good.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item is section 15.0 is upcoming agenda items. Dr. Saltzman, would you like to tell us what's planned for our next upcoming agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and the public this evening. At the February 9th special meeting, the board will participate in a budget development workshop. On the meeting on February 26, 2023, special meeting, the board will participate in the WASDA-WASBO Legislative Conference. On February 28, 2023, we'll have a work study. The board will participate in the Strategic Progress Monitoring 2 and Budget Workshop. On special meeting on March 2nd, 2023, special meeting, the board will participate in an executive session. Special meeting on March 7th, 2023, the board will participate in the Everett Public Schools Foundation Benefit Event. And on March 14th, 2023, regular meeting, the Board Agenda will contain the following: recognition of the Everett PTSA Council, PTSA grant for YMCA ECAP swim program spotlight presentation, special education update, enrollment outlook, January financial report, board travel, asset preservation update, and detention center educational program interlocal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Might I ask, I show a February 16th special meeting.
Is that a special meeting, or is just one director planning on being there, or two?
As far as we know, it's a special meeting, but it has yet to be published, which is why it's not on the list here yet.
Oh, it hasn't been published yet?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay. We'll move to section 16.0, which is executive closed session, and we have no executive or closed session for this evening, correct?
Correct.
We'll now move to section 17.0, which is adjournment. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I appreciate it.